Hello everyone, before we begin, I just wanted to let you know that because this is one of my bigger reviews, I've done one of the special limited edition scripts for this. I work with a very talented artist to make this happen every time we do a big chunky review. It's available exclusively to patrons and to anyone who sponsors the YouTube channel. So check the description below for the Patreon link or click the join button below if you're looking on YouTube. Guys, I really hope you enjoy the review. Let's get started.
Will I have an objective marker?
No. You will have many.
Will you be able to play with your friends?
Yeah.
Is there a competitive element to this game?
Yeah, if you want that, yes.
Can you grief other players?
A little bit.
Do you ever get a good look at your character?
You can see other characters, and they can see you.
Can you land on a comet?
Yeah, at the moment you can land on asteroids.
Can you do this?
Yes.
Will the game be fun?
Yes.
This is famous footage now, filmed in December 2014, nearly 2 years before the game's eventual release. This footage here was filmed in October of 2015, just under a year before the game's release.
Do we ever get to see ourselves?
No, you don't see yourself, so the only way for you to know what you look like is for somebody else to see you.
Can you run into other people, other players on the game?
Yes, but the chances of that are incredibly rare, just because of the size of what we're building.
Wow.
I think a lot of the discussion about the No Man's Lie meme rests in the absence of multiplayer in the game. A reality that set in when two people were in the exact same spot on the exact same planet and they couldn't see each other, revealing that there was either no multiplayer capability at all or that it was bugged. A lot of people tried to defend Sean Murray's promises here by saying that he was just overexcited and underexperienced, which he certainly was, but multiplayer wasn't the only thing missing from No Man's Sky. Here's a list of just some of the most major absent features that were shown or promised but didn't make it into the final game. Planetary physics, ship classes with meaningful differentiation, faction reputation with meaningful gameplay, homogeneous resource availability, asteroid landings, space station and fleet destruction, large fleets, traveling freighters, large-scale battles that players can join, in-atmosphere battles, NPCs outside trading posts and other docks, ringed planets, sand planets, flying between stars, complex creature behavior, rivers, points of interest, hacking locked doors, and radio chatter. Overpromising in development is not uncommon. Features are spitballed, they're thrown up on a whiteboard, maybe you start writing code and maybe that doesn't make it in because it just doesn't work. Maybe it just doesn't get finished in time for release. Hell, maybe you just change your mind. When The Division debuted, it had the promise of a drone companion app that would allow people to play from their iPad. This feature was scrapped because the developers claimed it would have been either too overpowered or too boring. As gamers, we're used to seeing some liberties taken with features lists, but we'd never seen anything like No Man's Sky and the audacity of its missing features list. That shit stung, and a lot of people to this day will reference No Man's Sky as the teachable moment where they learn not to trust hype, to never pre-order and to wait for reviews. It was like Aliens, Colonial Marines, or Mass Effect Andromeda, only way, way worse. But here's the pivot point. When Mass Effect Andromeda kinda sucked, you know what EA did? They took the money, they shut the studio that made the game, they cut and they ran. There were dozens of loose ends at the end of that game that were meant to be tied up by DLC, but EA didn't have the stomach for it. They abandoned one of the best franchises we've ever had, and who knows when we'll see it resurrected again. Sean Murray and Hello Games had every chance to cut and run, but they didn't. They made a metric ton of money from the sale of the game, and suffering endless death threats and abuse from a furious online community, they could have just sailed off into the sunset in their convoy of Lamborghinis. But they stayed, and this team of people worked and worked every day since launch, providing updates and patches, culminating in the release of the next update, nearly 2 years since the game's initial release date. And you know how much has been achieved in that time? Almost every single thing that's on this list is now in the game. No Man's Sky is no longer a lie. It's now a complete experience that is everything Sean Murray promised it to be and then some. The combination of its unique technical platform, its artistic vision, and the weight of hundreds of tiny improvements has created a gaming experience that you simply cannot get anywhere else. Had this game come out 2 years ago, this game right here, we'd remember it not as one of the biggest disappointments in gaming, but as a truly seminal, benchmark-raising work in the sandbox and survival genres. But here's the thing, I didn't like this game. I put about 40 hours into it, and I maybe enjoyed a total of about 10 of those hours. As much as I respect and admire what this game is, I simply cannot enjoy it because it's not the game for me, and I suspect it's not the game for most people. And yet I've seen dozens of reviews that just blindly recommend this thing as a safe purchase, without making clear just how much of an acquired taste this experience is, and frankly, I think that's just not the way to talk about this game. No Man's Sky is now a fully realized version of its original vision, but that vision is still extraordinarily grindy, repetitive, and uneven. It's a game that seems to delight in interrupting its own momentum by burying you in material requirements and the constant need to shuffle and reshuffle your inventory. And the promised exploration of these procedurally generated worlds is quickly revealed to be little more than smoke and mirrors, as each pretty landscape and arresting skybox soon melds into the memory of the last one and the next one. No Man's Sky is perfect if it's for you, but it's really, really boring if it's not. And today I want to tell you exactly what No Man's Sky actually is, so that you can decide for yourself if this is the sort of experience you want to saddle up for. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my review of No Man's Sky. What do you need, buddy? What do you need? For the repair job, sodium nitrate, of course. The one thing I don't have, sodium. Of course. Why would you do this? Why would you, like... How am I supposed to know that? Like, how am I supposed to know that? What is this? Where is it in the tooltip? Does it say, hey man, when you install this, make sure you put it next to the other thing, so that you know, so it does something. Hey man, I'm back with your brain. Reinsert core. It's an hour and a half time gate on his reboot process. Like, imagine if Han Solo had to mine fluid for the Millennium Falcon's hyperdrive before he made the jump to lightspeed. That's essentially what this game is. From the footage you've just seen, you might be asking yourself, which is the real No Man's Sky experience? Is it the soaring visual extravaganza of endless exploration, or is it the frustrating and mindless grind of a Korean MMO set in space and dialed up to 15? The truth is, it's both of these things. At its core, No Man's Sky is a survival game. You're constantly under the threat of dying in games like this, be it from the environment, from NPCs, or from other players, and your goal is to collect resources that make you more powerful so that you have a better chance of surviving in the long term. Very often, these games don't have a narrative focus or a set of campaign quests or objectives. They're very much about inhabiting the sandbox and creating your own adventures. In the case of No Man's Sky, you'll begin the game on a random planet, and your first objective is to refill your suit. There are two bars always present during your playthrough. There's the hazard protection, which protects you from things like heat and cold and radiation, and then there's the life support system, which is basically your oxygen. These are constantly depleting as you play, so you constantly need to keep refilling these by mining sodium and oxygen, which you can then convert into fuel. So at the very start of the game, your first job is to find and collect some sodium and some oxygen, and the way to do that is by finding it in an area around you and by mining it with your multi-tool. You click on it and it will automatically place that item in your inventory, and you can then consume it to keep yourself alive. Next up, it's time to repair your ship, which is broken. You'll find your ship nearby and you'll see that a number of its components are busted and require specific materials to fix. Some of this you can just mine, and some of it are specific pieces of technology that you need to craft. So again, off we go mining to collect things and craft things, and then we can bring them back to our ship and eventually take off. From here, we're on to the stars. We can seamlessly shoot into outer space, which is where the main quest starts to kick in. It will direct us to a nearby space station, a place where we can chat with aliens, trade goods, and pick up side quests. These quests typically involve basic tasks like scanning animals or delivering packages, and will reward reputation, components, and cash, so they're a good way to earn the things that you need. When we're ready, we're directed to a new location where we're asked to begin construction of a base. Base building is a huge part of the new No Man's Sky experience, as new structures allow you to recruit helpers who then open up new quest lines and technology. The grind for the materials to create all of these base structures is very real though, so be ready to sink some serious hours into that. At some point, you're going to bump into a freighter in distress. If you choose to help it out, you can then take command of this thing, and it now becomes your base in the stars. You need to dump a whole lot of materials into it to get it going, but at that point, you can send out small frigates in your armada on missions where they can collect valuable resources for you. Take the item? Yeah. I want it. It's got all this inventory slots. I don't even care what it is, just inventory slots. Give it to me. Now, at its highest level, that's the metagame housed within No Man's Sky. Building bases on planets and in space, which give you access to new technology, which allow you to build new things and build them faster, since you can get important upgrades or access trade routes that vastly increase the speed at which you gather resources. Within the metagame are a number of progression mechanics that create a sense of achievement no matter what you're doing. Your exosuit, multi-tool, and your starship are fully upgradable, and chasing the resources, currencies, and components required to upgrade these is how you'll spend a huge portion of your total playtime. There are 4 alien factions within the game, and interacting with them unlocks pieces of their language and reputation, which allows you to complete new missions with them. There are different classes of ships which each have their own strengths, and you have a chance to collect a number of these and upgrade them so that you have the right ship for a combat mission versus a long-haul hyperdrive jump. And there's just tons more outside of this. I won't list it all, but there's more, okay? One of the biggest complaints about the original No Man's Sky was that for all of its breadth, the game had no depth. You had a giant sandbox, but nothing to do. This is absolutely not the case now. There is a main campaign which will take you about 40 hours to work your way through. And while it's fairly generic text-based storytelling, it does have some interesting moments, and it will generally keep you engaged. There's side quests that emerge from your interactions with aliens, or from people living in the base you've constructed. There's missions that you can complete for resources. There's tons of stuff to collect and upgrade. There's heaps and heaps to do, and the beauty of all of it is that the economies of all of these activities overlap. So no matter what you're doing, you're probably making progress towards 2 or 3 objectives at a time. This range of activities is by far and away the biggest advancement that this game has made since launch, and it honestly makes it feel like a completely different experience because of it. So that's the metagame, and those are the core progression systems which sit within that metagame, and that's the bullet point list of all the stuff you can do. But that really doesn't describe what the No Man's Sky experience really feels like. This is a game that is so much more and so much less than the sum of its parts, so let's take a look now at how it actually feels to play No Man's Sky. At any time in No Man's Sky, you can summon your freighter to you like this. That never stops feeling good, to be honest. Now, you may think that this is just some asset in space that looks pretty, but no, I can fly up to this thing and land inside it, walk around inside it, build inside it if I want to. This isn't some cheap trick, this is the real fucking deal. It's amazing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, when I get a freighter, I also get a frigate, which I can dispatch on missions. What I don't know when I first did this is that frigates can sometimes be damaged, and when they are, you need to recall them and then repair them. Now, you dispatch those frigates from a menu in your freighter, so I thought that I would just go to the same menu and click the repair button and it would be fine. But no, that's not how No Man's Sky does. Turns out my frigates are also in my fleet, flying alongside my freighter, and I can also land on them. This here is my frigate, and to repair it, I need to land on it and repair repair it. I can fly my starship from my freighter to my frigate, land on it, walk around on it, and there's not a single loading screen or bit of trickery involved in any of that. It's fucking remarkable. But just as the realization of how awesome this is washing over you like a tidal wave, the wave crashes on your head when you realize that you are missing 2 rocks needed to repair the ship. 2 fucking rocks. Now, I go back down the ladder, into my ship, fly to a nearby planet, land on the ground, get out, find a nearby rock, click on it, get back on my ship, oh fuck, I'm now out of launcher fluid, god damn it. Okay, so I get back out of my ship, I click more rocks, click some different rocks, combine them, oh man, I have no inventory space. Okay, what do I need to do? I guess I'll just move this to my ship. Oh my god, okay, my ship is now out of range, I can't move it. Alright, I'll just destroy whatever this is to clear up an inventory space and hope I don't need it later. Okay, so I've made the metal thing, and I've made the container, and now I can combine the... Oh man. I need an empty inventory slot to combine these 2 things into fuel. Okay, I'll just destroy this item as well. Now I can craft the fuel, take it to my ship, take off, fly back to the frigate, land on it, walk over to the thing, climb the ladder, and click the button to repair it. This previous statement was brought to you by 2 fucking rocks. Now, I labored this point in the way that I did because it's the core of the No Man's Sky experience. It's these incredible, overwhelming moments of realization. The humbling feeling of the cosmic expanse stretching out endlessly before you, and the irresistible feeling of being able to strike out into any part of it at any time. An almost euphoric, intoxicating sense of possibility immediately dashed on the rocks of the reality that underpins it. The fucking rocks. The promise of No Man's Sky is unparalleled exploration, but the reality of No Man's Sky is a soul-crushing, frustrating, endless grind that sneaks up on you and hits you in the moments you least suspected or wanted, completely taking the wind from any sails that might be billowing at that time. I remember when I first gained access to my freighter, it was just awesome. I'd taken down some space pirates in a huge space battle, and the freighter had dispatched friendly ships to help me out, and it was really like me against the world in that moment, me against the universe, and I triumphed. I went on board, and as a token of gratitude, the captain gave me command of this freighter. This floating fortress was now mine, I was now master and commander, and as I set about trying to dispatch my frigate on its first mission, I learned that I need to build a freighter computer, because apparently giant space freighters don't come with computers in the future. But the fleet requires a fleet command room before it can depart. Wait, how could it not have a... How could it not be fully built? It's already in space. Why would you put a ship into space if it wasn't fully built? And to do that, I would need a huge volume of materials that I didn't even know where to get at that point. I was immediately shattered, and I just flew off into space feeling disappointed. I think the freighter example is the best one I can come up with of the frustrating duality of No Man's Sky. In one moment, you're Luke Skywalker, single-handedly saving the galaxy in a frantic dogfight, or you're Admiral Akbar, in command of a vast armada, and in the next moment, you are literally a crummy Jawa, scavenging for parts on the planet's surface. I've never played a game that swings so violently and so regularly between these 2 extremes, and I did not like it. I want to make clear here that this is a matter of personal preference rather than saying that this is objectively bad. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are going to find this considerable range, these highs and lows, really enticing, but I'm definitely not one of them. To be honest, I found myself constantly frustrated by the way that No Man's Sky would yank me out of the fantasy that it was so expertly drawing me into. When the game is firing on all cylinders and you have all of these resources that you need because you've spent 2 hours collecting them, the game is just a dream. Things happen, big things, exciting things. But the 2 hours of pain to get to that point burns bitterly, and it burns even more so when you realize that when the wave you're riding finally crashes, there's another 2-hour grind waiting for you, and potentially more depending on what you're doing. I do note that there is a creative mode in the game, which actually removes all of the resource requirements for anything and allows you just to build whatever you want. And you'd think that this would be the cure for what ails me, but I guess I'm just impossible to please. See, when you take away all of the resource requirements, you're really gutting the core game system, which is resource collection. There's no game left at that point. It's really just a big sandbox, and I'm really not down for that because I just sort of find sandbox games fairly dull. I guess I'm looking for a gameplay loop built on something other than just resource collection. I think the counterpoint that a lot of people will make about my frustrations and views here is that this is a game built on grinding, and you really can't complain about grinding in games that are built on grinding, and that's a totally fair point. I would say though that I'm very, very big into grindy games. I spent 30 years playing games now, and I've always gravitated towards more grindy games than less. I love the slow, steady progress towards a drop or an objective, knowing that every minute spent is making me incrementally stronger. But the difference is, in those games that I'm playing, the grind is actually fun. It's fun to bullet jump. It's fun to fire a Galahorn. It's fun to clear a screen of demons with a single ability, or to land a headshot with an M44. These things are fun to do. The grinding in No Man's Sky isn't fun ever. It might be relaxing, it might be chill, but it's never fun. It's always the same clicking on rocks and staring at your inventory, wondering how you're going to make it all fit in there. And for me, I just couldn't get past that wall where I know many others are able to do so. I want to start this section of the review by recognizing the utterly spectacular technological achievement that is No Man's Sky. It's truly remarkable, and to know that a team of like 6 to 15 people put this thing together is just so inspiring. I mean, you have the macro construction of the galaxy with a near infinite number of planets that are procedurally generated as you arrive at them, because no one's visited them before, so they don't really exist before you get there. And once they're created, they're there forever, part of the database, and others can visit and see what you saw. Then there's the generation of Flora and Fauna on the planet, which in the next update is just so lush and pretty. The old No Man's Sky worlds were sort of bleak and ugly, but not here. These all have a certain aesthetic charm to them in one way or another. And then there's the generation of weather patterns, item spawns, ancient relics, crashed ships, trading routes. All of this is really excellent. But more than that, the ability just to take off at any time and fly into space, and the way the asteroids are just there waiting for you, and other ships warp into the system, and you can travel across any length of space in an instant and just arrive there and land on a totally different planet. And all of this procedural work is being done on the fly without any loading screens. It is just remarkable. Sean Murray and his team have done something incredible with this technology, and it's going to be fascinating to see what they or other developers can do with this sort of tech in the future. To dig a little deeper though, I think we need to recognize that the technology aims to deliver two things: an uninterrupted sense of discovery. Now, the uninterrupted part, they totally nailed that. There's no loading screens ever, so that's a big tick. The discovery part, this is where I'm going to have to disagree with the general consensus out there and say that I think No Man's Sky's sense of discovery is actually pretty crap. I remember the layout of the lake in the middle of God of War's open world. I remember walking into the amusement park of Nier Automata for the first time. I remember every damn tile of Princess Peach's castle in Mario 64. I remember exactly how to get to my favorite car wash in GTA 3 from pretty much anywhere in the city. I remember the walk from Balmora to Vivek City in Morrowind. I can't remember much about the environments of No Man's Sky because for all of their procedurally generated beauty, they are still empty spaces covered with rocks, some trees, maybe some water, maybe some snow, and a whole lot of nothing. I've seen the deviant art screenshot porn, I've watched the montages. This is a pretty game, a stunning game at times. You won't ever hear me say otherwise, but beautiful vistas and horizons aren't discovery for me. For me, discovery is about the carefully curated spaces, tailor-made to enhance my experience, full of micro details that I can notice and memorize, rather than the endless skyboxes that I'll soon forget as they melt into the memory of a dozen other similarly beautiful skyboxes. But even beyond this, I think there's a deeper issue with the way that No Man's Sky handles exploration and discovery, and it's similar to the duality of the power fantasy I spoke about earlier, where one minute you're a galactic overlord, and the next minute you're a trash boy picking up plant garbage. Here's my problem with No Man's Sky exploration. For a game that exposes you to limitless, infinite possibilities, you are constantly obsessed with myopia, the tiny details and constraints that limit your experience, rather than the possibilities that lay beyond those constraints. It's a game where you can go literally anywhere and see almost anything, but you're going to spend 60% of your time staring at the inventory screen because it's so small and you're constantly having to move things in and out of it. It's a game where you'll arrive in a new galaxy full of new planets and environments, but your first stop is going to be the space station, because whenever you find a new one of those, you get a free inventory upgrade, and by God, if that isn't the most valuable thing in this game, then I don't know what is. Instead of flying over a planet to survey the ground, landing at points of interest, and then taking off again, you're just going to keep on flying because the cost of launcher fuel is so damn high that you can only take off like 4 times before you eventually need to go and farm more of it, and that's just too annoying. For me, No Man's Sky should feel like I'm in a galaxy bouncing around it and having adventures, but what it actually feels like is I'm inside this little box with a few peepholes in it, and I'm desperately trying to make that box bigger and bigger inch by inch so that I can experience more of the game, but in so doing, I'm completely disconnected from the broader experience of exploration and discovery. No Man's Sky isn't like being in a galaxy, it's like viewing one through a telescope. And if you've ever used a telescope, you know how constraining it feels. You know that there's so much more to see outside of the field of view, but the technology, the tool that you're using just doesn't let you do that, and it's almost bittersweet. That's very much how I felt when I was playing No Man's Sky. I have my own approach to reviewing video games, and it's informed by 2 tenets. The first is don't review a game the same way that you would a phone or an electric screwdriver. Games aren't utilitarian tools, they are pieces of art, so if you reduce them to simple things like playtime plus frame rate plus levels plus characters plus sound plus story minus microtransactions equals review, then you're doing them a big disservice. The other tenet is to always review a game based on what it's trying to do or what it is. Never review a game based on what you want it to do or what you want it to be. I like the older Assassin's Creed games more than the new ones, but if I were to ever review Assassin's Creed Origins or Odyssey, I wouldn't spend my time complaining about the change and arguing for why they should go back to the old style. I'll just talk about what the game is now and offer my thoughts on the good and bad aspects of that. I say this because I'm pretty firmly of a view that No Man's Sky is a pretty great game that just isn't for me. I fully accept and respect No Man's Sky for the game that it is now, but my mind constantly harkens to one question. What if a different game was built on top of this incredible technology? Many don't know this, but EA were trying to build exactly this interstellar procedural technology into the early stages of Mass Effect Andromeda's development. The game was meant to be a thrilling space opera against the backdrop of limitless, procedurally generated exploration. But BioWare couldn't land that vision, and so they pivoted back to a more conventional Mass Effect game that ultimately fell flat. But I always ask myself, what if they had succeeded? I wouldn't ask No Man's Sky to be a different game because Sean and his team set out to make this game, and 2 years post-launch they finally delivered on it. No Man's Sky is every inch of what was promised at launch and then some, and if you're down for what it's offering, it's a fantastic product that's worth every cent. You're going to have moments here that you're not going to be able to have in any other video game, but you're also going to have just as many moments of boredom, frustration, tedium, and confusion, and if you're okay with that, if you're signed up for that formula, then you're going to have a fantastic time. But if you're anything like me, you're going to look around at all the best parts of No Man's Sky and be waiting for the game that takes those things and builds a fun game on top of all of that. That balances the endless expanse with curated places to explore and actually remember. That delivers a deeper, more engaging combat experience. That delivers a narrative that you can sink your teeth into. That lifts your head out of the inventory screen and into the stars. I'd play that game. I'd probably love that game. When it comes to No Man's Sky, I can certainly respect it a great deal, but I've little more affection for it than that.